Welcome to the S&M podcast with Sean Spencer and Misty Spencer. Real talk with real people discussing some serious and not so serious hot topics. Let's talk. Hey everybody, it is S&M podcast. Woot woot. It is episode numero cuatro for you Spanish speakers. I used to speak Spanish.
Yeah?
Yeah, I lose it.
What
I
happened?
learn it, I lose it. I didn't practice.
So you abandoned Spanish.
I did not abandon Spanish. Spanish abandoned
By the way,
me.
if you need to know that about that little joke exchange right there, just take a look at podcast number 3.
Yes, we did. We dropped podcast number 3. And, it was a little heavier one.
Yeah.
I mean, they have been, but we wanted to give you kind of like how we're put together and lead you into our lives that way.
Or as you put it, how we were chiseled.
How we were chiseled. That true story. I do say that. That's how we're chiseled. And one of the ways that I was chiseled was by getting hit by a truck.
Oh. This is, by the way,
No, that was kind of
after
no.
knowing her for just a very short while, I understood how she could be hit by a truck.
Oh, please elaborate. I don't.
Well, I mean, you hit everything.
Oh, that's true. I'm very clumsy.
Wow.
I say the word extraordinarily often, so I'm going to try to lay off that word a little bit, but I caught that.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't know anything other than very right now. I'm very clumsy. You guys can give me a bunch of other names to use for it, but I am.
Accident prone.
Oh, man, am I ever. But that is
Clumsy.
very common in autism.
It is, yeah.
I worked with children with autism, and many of them, it's just the way the brain is. And so I am clumsy, but I did not hit the truck. That's the difference here. I hit the wall. I hit the corner of the table. I hit my head on the cabinet. I ran into a parked car. That's a whole nother podcast.
No, it's not.
No, that's not today.
I know.
It's another story. It's too long.
So good.
And so I did not hit the truck.
I know.
The truck hit me.
Yeah, technically that's correct.
So let's go back in time,
All right.
shall we? Yes, we're gonna go back to 1992. Oh yes, it's 1992, and Misty Osgood is riding her bike from home to her work.
Why are you talking like a 1-900?
I don't know. It was fun for a minute. All right, we're gonna talk
You just
normal.
have that voice.
Yes, I've always been told that,
Mm-hmm.
and so I used it for a second. There you go.
All right, I like it.
Give me a call, 1-900. So I was riding my bike. I worked at. All right, are you ready for it? Bob Orlando from Oh Shucks. You're gonna love this. I don't think he knows this. I never told him.
It's not.
I went to my job at
Applebee's.
Applebee's. Yeah, it's true
Shocking.
story. I was going to my job to pick up my paycheck. I am 16 years old, and I like to incorporate activity with duties. I've always been like that. I'm like that today. And so as I'm going down the sidewalk, another biker is coming towards me, and they are passing me on their bicycle, and there's a huge truck in the driveway of a veterinarian office. And so this truck was going to be coming out into this major roadway.
What kind of truck was this? Was it a pickup truck? Was it a semi truck?
So
Something in between?
It doesn't have as many axles as a semi truck. I do have a picture of it, and I'm going to find it. And if you watch our video podcast on YouTube, I will have the actual
Picture
clipping.
Wow.
So
that was in the newspaper.
It was.
That's right.
It was a
I forgot
big
about
deal.
that.
I was in all the newspapers. I was not very popular in high school for being anything good. I was more infamous, if you will. I had groups, I had friends and stuff like that, but I did a lot of attention seeking things all throughout high school. As I reflect back, I was attention seeking. And so when I wasn't popular in the right way, not like the cheerleaders or, people that were good in politics and leadership and all that. So anyhow, I became very famous after I got hit by the truck. It was unbelievable. So I'm riding down the sidewalk. I digress. I was riding down the sidewalk and I pass another biker and she passes in front of the truck, and the truck is like not a semi, but it has a lot of axles. So it's
a big box truck,
a big, large delivery truck, and it was delivering dog food and cat food to the veterinarian. We're not going to name the place, but biker passes and the truck, as I make a decision, I don't know if it's a good one. I would tell my children not to have crossed in front of the truck maybe, but I did. And I was young and I passed in front of the truck. I don't do that anymore. And he did not look before he left his position, and he hit me. And he hit me.
He kept going.
He did. He did not know that he hit me on my bicycle. And there's multiple lanes and people coming over a bridge on Port St. Lucie Boulevard.
They could see
Port
you.
St. Lucie, woo woo. Go Jags. And I, had full awareness that I had been hit by the truck. He didn't know it. He was gunning it to beat cars.
Traffic coming on. Yeah.
That was coming over the bridge. So he has it on the gas, but my bike tire, because I land on my right side, my bike tire starts dragging underneath his front driver's side wheels. And my right arm gets pinned under the bike tire.
Oh.
And so now I'm pinned and he's dragging me and I'm screaming. I'm fully aware. I'm fully awake. And I remember the smell. I can still smell diesel. I can still smell gas. I could smell burning flesh. I know some of you are queasy, but this is the truth. You want real talk? This is real talk. And so I could smell like skin and burning, and it was really gross. It wasn't good for me, but I could also feel my leg burning from road rash. And I also had full thought on what I needed to do. I knew I needed to move my legs because my right leg was pinned under my bicycle.
So you were now kind of in survival mode.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is as slow as I'm telling you, is as slow as it felt at the time. It was just so slow. And I knew that my left leg had the potential to get drugged back into the passenger side tires, or my bike might come loose and I go flying under. There was a lot of things that could have happened, not to mention there are cars coming over the bridge. I can see what's coming over the bridge and stopping. And people getting out of their cars.
Trying to wave down the truck?
Trying to wave him down.
Right. Good
To
Samaritans.
get him to stop.
Good Samaritans.
Well, he was blocking their way. They kind of had no choice. I think they were just yelling at him to get out of the way. I don't know that they knew I know.
If they were coming off a bridge, they have the advantage of vision.
I know.
So
but I was under the truck. So let's just say they saw me and they were being good Samaritans. I think differently, and I'll tell you why in a sec. I then feel the truck come to a stop, and I'm screaming. I am screaming, and I have full thought. I kept my face off of the ground so that my face didn't get messed up. My left, or both my left arm and left leg, I used to protect other parts of me. And he comes to a stop, and like a bus or a truck or whatever, it eases back a little bit.
And then,
And my arm, my right arm that is pinned under the truck, I now see, and I don't know if I remember, I have images in my head of the bone popping out of my arm under the pressure. I have those little images, but I don't remember it happening.
Right.
But then I look over and I go to take my arm out from under the front bike tire because I feel the release and I see that I have an open compound fracture.
You probably didn't know when it happened because you were so full of adrenaline.
Yeah.
That's likely what happened. You were in shock.
Yeah. And it was vivid. It was real. I could hear voices in my head. I was being told how to navigate this in essence. And so I decide that I'm going to stand up. And I start asking people, this is something like out of zombie movies. This is not, I may be exaggerating just a tad, but I am very bloody because my arm has a bone sticking out of it and flesh just hanging all over.
Can you say that in like a Christopher Walken voice?
I have a bone sticking out of my arm.
My arm.
And it was bloody. It was like a movie. Is that
so
a good?
slow.
It was slow
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah.
It was I don't know. I
Back
don't know
to
if
your
that-
regularly scheduled
Yes.
scheduled
So-
program.
I have this thing popped out of my arm, and I am walking around asking for help, but I'm also
Wait a minute. You have a bone out of your arm. You're bleeding out, and you're up trying to get somebody's attention. There was nobody around that.
everyone was standing around looking at me.
Oh,
It was
those.
like I was a tornado. But again, I had a lot of blood. My leg was also full of road rash, my hip. So I had a ton of blood kind of just coming out of me, and I was covered in it almost because it was dripping, and I was touching my arm and then touching myself. And I'm wearing just like a biker bra and biker shorts, you know, and I'm little. I'm 16. I'm a kid. Nobody would come near me.
How many people do you think they're there?
At least
5, 20,
no.
30, 40?
up in the 20s.
And
And
nobody did
people
anything?
kept coming over the bridge. This is the middle of the day at lunchtime, people trying to go to work or go pick up their kids or whatever. So I had stopped traffic, and not in a good way, not in that Marilyn Monroe way. It was more like a Rob Zombie way. I'm just walking around the street with the bones sticking out and the muscle hanging and my leg. And I am crying, asking people because nobody will come near me. And I'm like, somebody help me. But then I go into Phoenix mode.
Again?
And I start yelling and screaming at the driver. And I was awful to this human being. I had just had surgery. This was July of 1992. It was the day before my father's birthday. So it was July 22nd. My mom was at work. My sister and brother were at home. It was summertime. And so I had just had surgery that May on my same arm. Another story for another episode. There's a lot of them, kids, I'm telling you. But I had just had surgery in May, and I had just gotten usage of my arm back to ride my bike, to go back to work.
So you had a surgery 2 months before you got hit by a truck.
Yep.
So you were still recovering from that surgery, and now you have another traumatic event
On the same arm,
on the same arm,
but the humerus instead of the...
different bones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so here I am so angry because I'm like, I just got my usage back, but I'm also very vain. And I saw what he had done to my body.
That must have felt horrible.
Oh my God. I feel horrible for this human being.
Right. I'm not talking about hindsight, but at that moment, in the moment you were in, feeling the way you were, that must have looked like USDA.
Oh, it did. It was just
meat and bone and blood
and potatoes and the corn and the like skin from underneath my arm was hanging, and
She warned you.
It was horrible. Yeah, not for kids. And so then I decide that I'm going to go sit on the sidewalk, and the nurses from the veterinarian office come flying out, and because no one else will touch me. And it's at this moment that I go into shock. And I believe in my heart of hearts, and I still remember the feeling. I was also bleeding a lot. I was bleeding tremendously. My bones popped out. Yeah. And so in my head, I still feel it. I start feeling like I am being eaten alive by fire ants. My whole body feels like fire ants are attacking me. And I'm telling the nurses, get the ants off me, get the ants off me. I'm on fire. You're not doing your job. I start yelling at the nurses who are really trying to help me. They're bringing me blankets. They know I'm going into shock. Right. I am a child. I'm not a big woman now. I've always been smaller stature, but I was younger and I worked out a lot at the time. Oh, and I was bulimic. So I was thin, and that's another podcast. And so I'm sitting there and I'm yelling at the nurses for not doing their job. And then they ask me who they can call. There's no cell phone.
Yeah.
There's no, this is 1992. Right. There's no beepers. There's no nothing.
Well, there were, but you didn't have them.
Well, okay, maybe there were. I didn't know about it. And so here I am. They're now questioning me about who they can call. What's my name? And I now have to remember my mother's phone number at work.
While you're in shock.
While I'm out. And so I'm angry. I'm like, you're asking me questions right now? Go get the fire department. I'm being eaten alive right now. I'm angry. And then I give them the number, the whole thing, and the fire department arrives and they pick me up in the stretcher, and I'm not a very nice human being, and they put me into the fire truck. And
a fire truck?
Yes, I got to go like it's not a fire truck, an ambulance, but it's a fire department.
Fire rescue.
Yeah. It's different than
a traditional ambulance.
It looked different.
It's a rescue truck.
Right. And they were fire department or whatever. And they were
probably EMTs and
probably. And again, this is some years ago. This is a long time ago. And this is my memory.
And we think they are all heroes, by the way.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. They are my heroes, but I'm not very nice to them either, because they put me into the truck and I'm on the stretcher and they're like, Misty, you're going to be fine. You're going to be amazing. Don't worry about this. And they're just
like one-armed fine.
Well, because they have to now secure my bleed outs.
Right.
So they have me laying there and they're trying to talk very kindly and gently to me because I'm screaming. I'm not laying there doing nothing, right. But I keep trying to find my arm because my arm feels like it is in a 90-degree angle, but it's not. The actual arm bones and everything from my elbow down is laying down, but my humerus bone was split in half and a portion of it was sticking up in the air. So I keep swiping the air trying to find my arm because I don't. Well, the humerus bone was sticking up. Yeah. It made sense to the nerves or the tissues and whatever, but I can't feel it. And I was like, where's my arm? And I used a lot of explicitives. I do have a bad mouth often. I can control it. However, that day I was not controlling it. And I was like, you MRFers. These are fire people these are rescue people saving my life. And I am telling them that if they take my arm, go ahead and kill me because I'm not going to be able to live through this.
You literally told them that?
Yep.
Or you figuratively wanted to tell them that?
No, I'm saying out loud in shock. I've already yelled at everyone. I've yelled at the people that won't help me. I've yelled at the truck driver that hit me. I've yelled at the nurses for helping me, but not the right way. And now I am yelling at the rescue people trying to save my life. I'm telling them, don't waste your time, because if you take my arm, I'm not one of those people that can live without it. I'm too vain for this. Yeah.
Batting 1,000.
So keep going and keep going. There isn't a human that I am not mean to. I had a nurse. She was she had an accent. She had a heavy accent. And she was telling me that she is going to have to rub out the rocks from my arm.
The asphalt?
The asphalt, yes. I had road rash. I had asphalt and rocks stuck in my arm while my bone's sticking out. And she felt it was necessary before they knocked me out to start cleaning it. She's like, I have to do this. And I'm not going to do a bad accent because I don't want to offend anybody. I'm very bad at accents. But it was like, an accent. And I couldn't understand what she was telling me, A. And B, why are you touching me right now?
Wow.
I am obviously not in a good place. And you think that rubbing the rocks out of my arm right now is the right decision? Get the... And it went on and it went on. And I am now degrading her.
Helping you.
Because she did not want me to be infected and they couldn't decide to put me under because my a lot of stuff's involved. I could die.
Yeah.
I
think they're pretty used to that when you have a traumatic accident or whatever. People aren't in their right minds. The chemicals in your body are just flooding your system and making you survive. Not polite, just survive.
Yes, they stayed kind. Nobody was unkind. Everybody was really nice to me. I was a kid. This is in reflection because I know the truth. I know what happened. And I recover or not recover. I want to say one thing. I was still in the hospital and they at that time asked me for my father's phone number. They'd only asked me for my mom's at that point, and I was in a different place. I was in shock at the time. They've now given me some drips, a little bit of painkiller and whatever, and they said, we need your father's number. And my mom wasn't at the hospital yet, and that's when I cried. That's when I broke down.
Interesting.
My father was the only part of that whole thing that my real emotion came out, and my fear and what this is going to do to my family. We didn't have health insurance, and it was a different time back then. And I was helping my parents pay bills, and what is this going to do to my family? And I broke when they asked me for my dad's number. And so fast forward, I recover, and I leave the hospital however many days later, a lot of days later.
How was it, if I may, with your dad when he got to the hospital? Oh,
so the way that this panned out, I'm glad that you asked that.
You said your mom was on her way to the hospital already by the time he could get a phone call and make way to the hospital.
I don't remember seeing my dad before going under. Okay. I only remember seeing my mom, but that doesn't mean my dad wasn't there.
Right.
And he's not alive to debate it.
Yeah.
So if he was, he was. If he wasn't, I don't remember. But
that's another podcast.
But I remember certain things distinctly, whatever it is. You know the word. I type better than I talk sometimes.
Okay.
So I wasn't actually in a good place with my dad at the time. My dad and I were always so very close. I was a daddy's girl. He said when I walked in, sunshine just walked in the room. I knew how much my father adored me day in and day out. It's something I was blessed with. We had a huge connection, and my parents worked really hard to let us know that our unit was the most important thing. My siblings felt the same way. Our father was amazing, and I was just 16, and I was hormonal, and I was a bitch.
Well, phases.
Yes, and
I daddy's girl, then you become mommy's girl,
and I had
switches several times while they're growing up.
And I had some bad things happen to me that I didn't tell anybody about. That's another podcast. And I was there, that wherever I was there, and he didn't know why. My dad didn't know why I was so sad, why I was so angry, why I didn't want to talk to him anymore, why I didn't want to hang out with him anymore, why I was rejecting him. And he really worked hard to not allow it to affect him as he treated me. But man, I just wasn't very nice. I was hurting at the time. I wasn't nice to anybody. That's the theme of this. I wasn't nice to anybody because I felt not nice. I wasn't being treated nicely by people in my life. So I wasn't in a good place with my dad. But when they asked me for his number, it flooded me. So I wake up and, the hospital's the hospital. We don't need all that aftermath. But because of insurance and things like that, I couldn't go to a rehab center every day or any occupational therapy every day to have my wounds cleaned out. And my wounds had to be cleaned out 3 times a day. Wow. And my parents couldn't make that kind of commitment. So my dad said, I'll do it. Okay. And I was like, I'm in. And we high-fived, and this is what we were going to do. And so my dad would, give me Vicodin, morphine in the beginning, and then fade to Vicodin. And he was giving me high dosages of medication and waiting until he could see I was starting to fade a little bit. And he would look me in the eyes and he would say, all right, baby, ready? And I'd say, I'm ready. And he'd go, put your game face on. And I did. And I put my game face on because we love football. That's where that comes from. We love sports. I love all sports. I don't understand them all. I don't pretend to. I don't know how all the, sports score. I don't know all the things, but I love sports because of my family. And yeah.
Yeah, home run is worth 7 and a touchdown is worth 1.
Oh, okay. See, that I know little things, but if you ask me about like the Derby there's sports I just don't know about, but I love watching them. And so my dad, we used a lot of sports references when we communicated, and he say, put your game face on. And he had to clean out my wounds. And even with, a lot of medication, I still felt a lot of pain. And he'd watch me fight through it, and I watched him fight through it. Cause
how long, like you said, you had to have your wounds cleaned out 3 times a day. How long did it take for each one?
So in the beginning, give or take, man, I don't know, probably 45 minutes to an hour we'd be there, because I had extensive wounds and my arm was broken. But because of my wounds, they couldn't do a permanent cast. So we'd have to remove a cast every day, and put the cast back on every time he cleaned it. And I had to be refitted because my arm wouldn't stretch open. They sewed my tendons together. My bone took out my entire muscle belly. And so the only way that I could keep my arm extension was to tie the tendons together. And so my arm was caught probably at a 45 degree angle. And so I had to go to physical therapy every week to push my tendons out. So not only did I have that and the cast, and it had to be refitted every month. My dad rehabbed me for a year.
Wow.
Yeah. My dad spent an entire year. My mom also was part of that. My mom did a really great job of not making me feel like I couldn't keep being who I was. So I was still allowed to have friends over, or my boyfriend at the time. He was allowed to come hang out with me when I was recovering, and we play video games. And my siblings, she didn't bubble me, which I appreciated, even though I was struggling. I went back to school. I was smart and I was passing. I got one of the main parts in the school play at Port St. Lucie High School with Mr. Madden, who I know on Facebook still. And we did Play On. Mike Hurley was in that.
Yeah,
some of our
story.
Orlandoans know Mike.
Yeah.
So I had just been hit by a truck in July, and I had done all of that. I also got the secretary on the leadership team. I won secretary. I started becoming popular for different reasons. And I'm going to round it out with this, because this could go on forever, and I want to come back to my dad another day. I was in a very bad place at that time, and the universe, God, Buddha, the earth, I don't care what you want to call it, something happened, and it was a major intervention in my life. I was so mean to so many people because I was in so much pain that truck and that accident helped me see how beautiful, because I have my own I'll talk about my near-death experience and all of that another time. But I was able to come out of that and respect my life. And I made it my mission from that point forward to connect with others, to love other people for real, not use all of my intangibility, my autism, my abandonment issues. I started working against them and started being tangible. And I got a lead in a play. I was secretary on the leadership team. I graduated honors in high school. I was in a great place, and I was in the most pain in my life I'd ever been in.
You know what they call that?
What?
Falling into the pile of shit and coming out with the gold nugget.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I see
it's
it
not
differently.
Always, there's always the opposite. I think you kind of taught me that.
For me, it's that sometimes, a lot of bad stuff happens to you, but what is it trying to tell you?
Right.
What's the message? What's the opportunity? How can you grow? And I'll tell you how. You look at who you were and why you were there and why you were so unhappy, because when you're hurting is when you have the most time. When you're depressed and isolating, that's when you have the most time. When you're laid up in the hospital for 12 days, sitting alone, in pain on medicine, that's when you have the most time.
Certainly.
When you have time alone, that's when you have the time to find the opportunity instead of wallowing in the sorrow. I'm not saying there isn't time for the crying, the sorrow, and accepting it and acknowledging what's happened to you. But at some point, you have to move that forward. And the people who know me today, a lot of them would never know I was like that. But I was. And I'm so grateful for what happened to me.
Yeah.
Because now I am designing my life around helping others.
Well, I've seen videos of that time period in your life. And I think the truck literally scared the crap out of your anger.
Oh, yeah.
And the anger said, oh, I'm out of here.
It obliviated it. I had no choice.
Yeah.
I had no choice but to respect my life or go the other way, which was to become more self-destructive because I was maimed. And I live with that. That's another podcast. Vanity and physicality. So I'm going to end it there because we've been on a long time, but that is how Misti got hit by a truck.
Yeah. And don't confuse Misti getting hit by a truck as a blessing, or you get blessed by getting hit by a truck. That's not the message here. So,
no, the message is that bad stuff happens to all of us.
Yep.
Everybody has a story.
Yep.
I'm just telling you mine so that I can tell you the moral. what I learned from really bad shit that happened to me that I now can turn into my success, my reason, my purpose. And my only purpose in this life is to have a real impact, a transformational impact on others so that they don't suffer. Yeah. I don't suffer, and I've been through a lot. You are learning how not to suffer, and you've been through a lot.
It feels good.
Right. And if people see that in us, people see that in me, and I want to tell them why. It's not because I hold some high, divine place in heaven. It's not because I'm an angel. It's not because I'm whatever I have been labeled or label myself. It's not that. It's really that just taking everything that happens to you and reflecting and figuring it out. Figure out your purpose. And I want to help others do that.
And I'm very fortunate to have a partner to do that with.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for listening to my story.
Do I have a choice?
Yes.
Oh,
you could have told me we're not doing this at all.
Oh, no.
So
we've conquered more difficult things.
We have conquered so much more. So that is it for episode 4 of S&M Podcast. And it's so funny, Sean? We did not talk about whatsoever what we were going to do for episode 5, but I did just have a thought. And I swear on my children, we never said this out loud to each other before. I say it right now. I think it should be their choice. I think it should be dealer's choice. Whatever.
I'm down with that.
I say people just start suggesting stuff. And if we can find a theme, if we can find somebody getting on somebody else's bandwagon and start building up a certain subject, we want to do this on Tuesdays. It's coming, Real Talk Roulette, where we pick a subject we don't know we're talking about for a minute, because Carmen Vallone from Orlando Improv taught us about this fun game. Yeah. So we're going to be doing that. But no, this is different. We'll do our entire podcast without rehearsal, but we do study. We'll make our decision 48 hours
before.
No, I say 48. 48 hours from now. So let's say by Monday, 8 p.m. on Monday, whatever is out there from this podcast, we'll study from Tuesday to when we record.
Right.
And we will do whatever they want.
Oh, Lord.
And we won't prepare. We'll just study if it's a subject. Or do we take out the preparation? You guys decide. Give us a subject and say prep or no prep, whatever you want. And the most of either, I do analytics. I love analytics.
All right.
We're going to come up with the most common denominator.
And I've done karaoke roulette.
There we go. So you guys decide. You decide if we get to prep or not, and you get to decide what we are going to do in our episode number 5, because it's a milestone, folks. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Entertained?
Are you not entertained? S&M Podcast. High five, Mr. Spencer. We'll see you guys next time.
Take care.
Go to YouTube, video podcast, all the audio on the streaming.
Peace out. Bye.